Okay, so I'm curious, do you stand up or do you sit when you were doing a Zoom presentation? And have you actually tried both options? Well, that is what we are going to talk about today. Should you be trying standing up for your Zoom presentations, or is it better if it's sitting down? So what are the differences and how can you test it without feeling completely overwhelmed? Because I have to admit that when the idea was first floated last summer and someone said, why don't you try presenting standing up? I thought, oh, I would have to change so much and I wouldn't even know where to start. So I'm not even sure I'm going to bother. But it is one of the best things that I decided to do last year. So I want to share some insight into how do you decide whether you sit or stand? What are some of the things to consider? And how do you test it in a way where you don't have a bunch of headaches or overwhelm? There are simple ways for you to test this out. I am really excited to see that we've got some people who are here live, and I'd like to hear from you. Does anyone here right now, let me know in the chat, do you stand up ever? So right now I am standing, and people have asked me that. They've said, I think in your videos, it looks like you are standing, and I am. I do stand for many of my presentations, especially if I am teaching something, but I don't always stand up. I do actually have a chair that is a similar height to my standing height, and sometimes I do sit down. So I'll share a little bit more about how I do that. Now, if you are new and you are just coming across my channel, my name is Kat and I help people to create more professional and engaging online presentations, and how you show up and present can be impacted by little changes like whether you are standing or sitting. Now, I do want to quickly say before we get into today's lesson that if you are someone who's looking to really up your presentation game, especially online presentations like on Zoom, I do want to let you know that I have a training that is kicking off very soon. So every single Thursday in May, I'm going to do live training, help you build up a really professional and engaging presentation that stands out in a sea of, let's face it, some really boring Zoom presentations out there. So let's make it better. And with the live training, you'll actually get real-time support and feedback. And the other thing that's really nice about this setting is that you will actually get to experience firsthand all of the tools and techniques that I recommend you do when you are running a Zoom session. All right, enough about that. The link is in the description. Let's get into the meat of this. And when it comes to sitting versus standing, there are a few things that you need to know. Now, I do want to acknowledge off the bat, there are going to be individuals for whom this is not an option. And I am not saying one is bad or that you have to do it a different way. And I know that there are people who are not able to stand, and that is completely okay. For those who are able to try out both, I really do want to encourage you to try both options. And let's actually flip it a little bit, because right now I know I am talking about virtual presenting, but let's imagine for a second that you're in person. When you are presenting in person, you're typically faced with a couple of options. So you might enter a room to do a presentation, and it's expected that you are going to stand up for that presentation. Now, there are other circumstances, though, where you might come into the room and it actually makes more sense for you to be seated. Maybe there's just a few people around a table, and so you want to sit down and be kind of at the level of those people in the room. Oftentimes, the room dictates what's going on. Now, when we're online, it's a little bit different because, well, it's us and a camera in front of us. There's no one else in the room. But it's a similar question that you want to ask. And when it comes to the two different options, I would say for both in-person and virtual, some of the differences that I think about, one is when you're seated, to me, sitting down feels more intimate, like I'm having a conversation with that person. Maybe I'm with a small group sitting around a table. That's when I think of sitting. It's like, is this conversational? Is it more casual? Is it a little bit more intimate? Then maybe sitting might be the right option. Now, when I think about standing for a presentation, I'm usually thinking it's a little bit more polished, a little bit more of that sort of presentation mode where maybe I'm teaching something to a group, or I picture a larger room. So maybe that's a lot more people. I would stand up. If it was a lot of people, I wouldn't just sit at the front of the room and talk to them as if I'm having an intimate conversation. Now, there are ways to do that. I'm not dismissing that, but typically that's how I think about it. One's a little bit more polished and one is a little bit more casual, intimate, and conversational. Now, you can still be conversational when you're standing up. I feel like I'm pretty conversational when I talk to you on these live streams, and I'm standing up. So you can do both. Now I'm going to take a look. I see that there are some comments, and I did ask you to hear whether you sit or stand. So I see Lewis says always sitting. Yeah. And also endurance is another thing. How long are you presenting for? That's another important thing. So Lynn says, I stand for workouts and when I host bingo, but for live streams, I sit. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. So you have a couple different situations. Jez says, I've been standing to present for the last 2 months and I love it. Just started standing recently. I have more energy. Yes. Okay. So let's talk about that. And you can actually just see right now, I kind of did one of these and I can do that because I am standing up. And I do feel like you can kind of get engaged at a different level. Like your whole body can be in it. You can kind of push off from your feet. You're grounded and you're able to kind of tap into that energy. You're also tend to have your shoulders back. You're not kind of hunched over. Often when we're sitting, we're kind of hunched over. Maybe our shoulders are rolled back. We might be looking down at our slides or our computer or at the people on the call, which, as you probably know, I do not recommend. I want you to be looking at the camera like 90% of the time. But when you are standing up, often you kind of can feel that energy and you can really harness that energy and it comes out. So you can be a little bit more engaged, a little bit more lively when you are standing. It comes more naturally for many people as opposed to when you're seated. That does not mean that you cannot be lively and energized from your seat. It's just that it's not necessarily the most natural thing to happen. So I wanted to share that. I see here also William, business meeting. I sit, but I have a wedge that makes me sit up straight. That's great. We're going to actually get back to that in a little bit more. Tommy, I always stand up. Using a standing desk converter makes it easy to switch from sitting to standing. Excellent. I'm loving all of this. Okay. So one of the things I want you to think about when it comes to this question is, what is the mood that you want to set? When you think about a live stream where someone's just sitting there having a conversation with you for a while, you probably are picturing someone maybe sitting down. Versus myself, oftentimes I am teaching something. And when I am teaching something, I feel like I want to be standing up and presenting and kind of showing up with a different energy. So what is the mood? Is it conversational and intimate? Or is it a little bit more polished or more like a presentation or more like you are teaching something? So that's definitely a really important question that I want you to consider. All right. The other thing is scaling. So when you are presenting, you always want to think, how am I coming across and is it scaled accordingly? Now, this term is something that I am stealing from one of the earliest lessons that I received when I was new to presenting. So my very first job out of university was to be a recruiter. I used to travel around to high schools all over Canada and talk about the university that I thought they should go to. When we were in training, one of the first things that I was taught was that the number of people in the room kind of dictates how you show up. For example, if I walk into a room and there are only a few people, I'm probably going to keep my hand gestures kind of close to my body. I'm not going to be wildly out there, and it's going to be a little bit more casual and a little bit more reserved. I can still have energy, but I'm not going to be amped up as much as if I were to walk into a room with 100 people. Or if you're ever in a room with 1,000 people, you actually want to scale up your energy to meet the size of the group. You can actually use really sweeping hand gestures and have your hands all the way up to the side, and it does not look strange when you're in a really large room. If I'm in a room with only 5 people and I've got these big sweeping hand gestures, yeah, it doesn't really match. So it's a similar principle, is you want to scale accordingly based on what it is that you're trying to do. What are you trying to evoke? And I know we're not in a physical room with lots of people, but it's the similar kind of idea that you want to ask. So I think you should test. If you have not tested both options, then this is the first thing that you should do, is try it out. If you are able, try out both options. And before you start thinking of all of the reasons why it would be really difficult to do, this is where I want to have this conversation about making it simple. And so the first thing you want to do is to actually keep it simple. This test should be simple, meaning do not overcomplicate things. Do not go out and buy things to change your space in order to do a test. I just want you to test sitting versus standing, and I want you to do the same thing. So when I say that, I actually mean I would like you to come up with 2 to 3 minutes worth of content. So maybe it's something that you did recently. Maybe it's a topic that you just like to talk about, something someone asks you about and you would excitedly tell them the answer. So come up with something with your current setup, which I am assuming, if you haven't tested, that you are probably seated. And I want you to actually record 2 to 3 minutes of you talking about that topic, probably the way that you would if you were actually presenting it. Now take that recording, put that aside, and you're going to do this again, but standing. Now, when I say keep it simple, I actually mean maybe take your phone and put it somewhere tall. If you have a tall shelf that's equal to your height when you're standing, put it there. If you have a laptop, maybe stack a couple of boxes, put your laptop on top of the box and speak into the laptop. All you need to do is record yourself for 2 to 3 minutes doing the same spiel, that same presentation, except this time you're doing it at the different level. And notice how you feel. Do you present differently? Do you breathe differently? Because maybe you're actually, the breathing is better when you are standing up and you're upright and your shoulders are back and your diaphragm is able to do its job versus sitting down. Pay attention to these things. Do you find it easier to harness a little bit more of that energy that you might need? So these are the things I want you to pay attention to, but I do not want you to overhaul everything at first. Also, I know it's painful for many of us. Watch back both videos. I know you'll learn a lot just from actually doing it. So spending those few minutes seated, spending those few minutes standing will actually tell you a lot that you need to know, but also take a look back at yourself. Has anyone done this? Let me know in the chat if you have actually done this. And I see here, I usually stand up during presentations. I feel it's better for my voice. Yeah, that's really interesting. And then David says I'm usually sitting. Edward just got a standing desk, so I'm going to switch it up. That's exciting. Please let me know how that goes. Oh, and Bjorn, I have a very desk and change between sitting and standing. To be fair, at home, I sit way too long and when I'm at Zoom. I'm going to put this up. So also I'm a big fan of when you're able, turning off the camera and actually moving around and standing up if we're sitting for a lot of time. The very desk is a great option. This is something when I hurt my back a number of years ago, I bought the very desk because I needed to start standing at work. That was a great option. As I healed, I was able to do both options, sit and stand. So that is a great option. And this is where we get to step 2. If you like standing up to present, if you felt more energized, you liked how you showed up, it made a difference, it's something that you want to implement, that's where you need to start thinking, okay, how can I adapt my space so that I can stand up and there aren't a lot of friction points. You do not want it to be super difficult for you to choose to stand up. And this might mean that your camera is always at standing height or maybe you have 2 cameras. And I don't want you to necessarily break the bank. So what I will actually show you my space. It was supposed to be temporary, but I haven't changed it and I'll explain why in a second. But are you able to either get something like the very desk where it can go from sitting to standing? Are you able to actually switch your desk, get a standing desk or a sit-stand desk? There are different options that might be available to you. The main thing is that you need your camera to be at that height, but also you need your computer and your controls and your microphone all to come with you. And that's where you want to reduce these friction points. You want to make sure that you don't have to be reaching for things or really awkward. It should not be awkward. If anything, it should support you being able to present. It should not be a distraction. So what I ended up doing is I took a look at my space and I said, I have an IKEA desk. I have 2 legs on one side and I have a filing cabinet on the other side. It's a very typical IKEA desk setup. And I thought, I'll just go to IKEA and get standing height legs because it already fits. It's not very expensive. The mistake I made last summer is that everybody and their brother was going to IKEA and getting standing height legs and they were all completely sold out. So as soon as I realized that, I thought, okay, I will have a temporary stopgap. And that was me going to Bed Bath & Beyond and I actually bought risers for a bed. So you go to the store and they've got those little risers that lift up your bed so you can store more things under your bed. I went and I checked, okay, how much height do I want? Turns out that it was kind of between 7 and 8 inches of the lift that I was looking for. And I also wanted to make sure that it could support the weight of my desktop. Now, I don't actually have a lot on my desk, but I wanted to make sure. Because this is a bed riser, they're actually designed, they obviously distribute the weight, and they can tolerate a decent amount of weight because it's a bed and a person sleeping on the bed. So I felt good about that. And I thought, okay, this will just be up for a few weeks and then I'll get these legs. That hasn't happened. And I have this same setup. So I'm going to actually show you. I will preface by saying I moved the garbage out of the way, but I did not clean up all of my cables. So if anyone gets triggered by some messy cables, warning, that's about to happen. It's reality. There are cables. I have a setup. So I'm going to show you on the one side, I have the risers under the legs, and on the other side, I have the risers on the top of the filing cabinet. And I will actually explain one of the little things that I had to do to amend. Now, because I have to step back in order to kind of point at things, I'm going to step away from the microphone. I'll show you this and then I'll come back and explain a little bit more. So you're going to get a sneak peek into the messy behind the scenes and this $40 hack that I used that I still use to this day. And if it ain't broke, well, I do want legs. Let's be fair. I do actually want legs. Okay, so let's take a look. Okay, so that's my setup. And you might have noticed that I have books underneath the legs, and I want to explain why. Because you would think you have 4 risers, they're all the exact same height, so why would you need to put books underneath the legs? That is because there's a little divot. So where the leg, it sits in, there's a little bit of it's around 1/2 inch or maybe 3/4 of an inch where the leg sits in. And because on the filing cabinet side, that doesn't happen, it sits flush on the top of the riser, then I needed to account for that difference. So if you have just 4 legs, this is an option. By the way, it's not the best option, but it is a cheap option and it technically works. I had to adjust by adding a little bit of height. So I just went to my bookshelf and I measured books that were basically the same that accommodated for the height, and it worked. And so those poor books have been hoisting up the risers since the summer. So that is what I did. It is not pretty, but it works, and it gives me a standing height desk. Now it's a standing height all of the time. I do actually sit a fair amount when I'm working on preparing content or on other Zoom calls where I want to sit down. I don't want to stand all day. So I have a drafting chair. Now, at first I just went out and I got an attractive looking bar stool. Bad idea. Don't go for that. That did not support me, and it definitely did not last very long. So I went out and I actually purchased a drafting chair. So it's the height of the standing desk. It allows me to sit and to be comfortable and not have back pain. So that is how I do a lot of my work. Or if I sit down, sometimes I present sitting down. It's all about that context, all about that mood. What am I trying to evoke? So that is what I have set up there. Okay, I'm going to take a look here. Oh, that's actually pretty tidy. Well, thank you. It's tidy for me because I don't see all of those things because I'm up here and the desk kind of covers the cables and cable management. And I see Lee says, I feel better now about having my monitor on a MacBook box. Yeah, I no judgment. Figure out what works for you. What allows you to show up your best? Because they just see what's in the box. They don't see everything else. So it doesn't have to look really pretty. And the first time that I did start, I just had a box. I just lifted up my mouse and I lifted up my Stream Deck and I lifted up my microphone. And that's how I did my first few presentations. Now for me, because I have my camera on a tripod, I was able to independently lift up my camera to another height. And so that definitely made it pretty easy. And yes, I measured the books. Let's see. Lynn is saying here, I've been wanting to get a drafting chair, but I can't choose which one. Do you have a recommendation? Oh, that's a good. So I spent a lot of time on doing research because I did not want to spend a couple $100 on a crappy chair. So I read almost all of the reviews for any chair that I was looking at. I read real people, verified purchase reviews. I cannot remember at the moment the name of the one that I got, but I am happy with it. And I can share that. Maybe I can add that to the description because I am pleased with it. Granted, I've only had it a few months, and I know that really you want to know, is it going to last longer? But I'm pretty pleased with it right now. I just can't remember who it's from, but I can get that information. All right, so what if standing is not an option? Because for some people, they either are not physically able to stand, or maybe your space, you are not able to adjust your space. It could be that it is company owned furniture or space, or you're not at home, you cannot make these changes. Some of the things that I recommend, first and foremost, take a look at your shoulders. Are your shoulders rolled forward and hunched, or are your shoulders back? And even if your shoulders are to the side, maybe practice pulling them back just a little bit and see what difference does it make. Even if you are sitting down, and I like that example of before of having the wedge, try to make it so that your back is upright. So first, just actually take a look. Am I sitting upright? You could do this right now while you're watching. The second thing I want you to consider is, can you adjust where you sit on your chair? Now, an example, so we had the wedge example, you could also just sit at the edge of your chair. Sort of like you're just sitting down, you can have your legs firmly planted on the ground with basically just perched on the edge of a chair. What that often does whenever we sit like that is we usually have our back more upright, our shoulders will be back, it'll allow us to breathe a little bit better, kind of stand up with more attention. So choosing where you sit. The other option is you might want to consider, for those times when you want better posture, is temporarily swap out your chair for a stool. Now I have an example. So this is an IKEA stool. It is adjustable so that it's actually meant for people who have a standing height desk, for them to be able to just kind of lean back temporarily. For people who are actually standing most of the day, you can just kind of lean on it. It's also one of the easiest things to assemble from IKEA. Now, this can also go down though. So this can actually be just a regular normal desk height or standard desk height. What this does is allows you you perch on the edge. So instead of you scooching forward on your seat, you can just sit on the back of this stool, have your shoulders back, and then be presenting like you are standing up. So these are some of the ways that you can sort of mirror the impact of standing up and kind of harness that energy, breathe better, have your lungs open, all of that, but while doing it seated. So those are some really simple things that you can do. And I would encourage you also to test it out. Record yourself just sitting normally in your chair, and then record yourself again when you are adjusting your shoulders, maybe sitting at the edge of your chair or trying out a different object like a stool. So those are some of the things that I would recommend if you cannot actually sit. So Patrick is saying, I bought one of those upper back braces. It's done wonders for me. I only put it on about 10 to 15 minutes a day. Now, when you say, Patrick, if you can follow up, do you mean like does it go around your shoulders, kind of pull you back? I've seen those. It looks like a little figure eight, or maybe it's something else, but I would love to hear more about that. And Yuli says, the shoulder thing is the other point why I'm standing. Yeah, when you're standing, automatically, you're going to be more upright. You can breathe better, etc. For me, I really at the core, as soon as I realized I could stand at home and do these presentations online, it was similar to how I was facilitating and presenting before. So it felt to me kind of like coming home. But I know that some of you might not have a background in presenting, and that doesn't feel the same way, but I still encourage you to try it out and see, are you able to project better? Can you up your energy better? Because if you know about presenting online, your camera steals some of your energy. And so when you can harness that energy more naturally and more easily, it's going to come across in your presentations, and it's going to make more of a connection with the people that you're talking to. But you're not going to know if you don't actually try it out yourself. And Patrick confirms, yes, it's that. So the figure 8 that pulls your back. That's cool. So that might be good if somebody is maybe seated and you put your shoulders back for a bit and then you start to kind of slouch forward again. And the other thing is, if you're looking directly at your camera, you should not be hunched over just looking at your computer. But I know that happens. So this is okay. Here's a question. Do you ever step back so folks can see your gestures? If so, how do you manage reading the comments? So I typically don't move around too much. Now I've got my shot in pretty tight, so you can get my hands in there, but you can actually have your shot back a little bit more. I purposely don't have a wide angle in this space because I don't want to show the door. Like I have kind of a door over there. I've got a bookcase over here. I don't like how it looks with the wide shot. So you could have a wider shot, maybe put yourself back a little bit more, and you could do that with still being the same distance from your computer. So I could theoretically put this back a little bit more so you can see more of me and I can still read everything at the exact same distance. So that's what I would recommend if you wanted to adjust that way. But I purposely have kind of chosen a little bit of a tighter shot, and that's more of a personal preference, but the comments would all be at the exact same point, if that makes any sense there. And what I do with my chair is I just shove it to the side. Anytime I'm doing a live presentation, I just push it. It's over by the door and it's just hidden out of sight. That's the other thing about the tight shot, is that you can just have stuff off to the side. Oh, okay. Matt, good question. Did you mention anti-fatigue mats? So I didn't, but I will say if you are doing a standing desk where you are actually going to be standing most of the time, an anti-fatigue mat is great. I did have that when I hurt my back and I was standing. I wasn't able to sit for many months. So I had an anti-fatigue mat and it really does make a difference. Also being able to have, if you are going to choose to stand most of the time, please know that standing exactly still, your body's not designed for that, just like sitting still. You should be kind of moving around. So having something you can prop a foot, you can't see me doing this, I don't know why I'm doing it, but you can prop a foot up or something where you can allow you to move a little bit more naturally in that space. The reason I didn't talk about it is because I actually do sit down. I stand up to present and I do sit down for most of my work. I should probably switch it up. And there are days where I will just stand up. If I'm on a Zoom call, I can just push my drafting chair out of the way and kind of stand up instead. So there are things that you can do to kind of tweak that. But if you are considering it, so here's my advice. If you actually want to just adopt standing more and having a standing desk, ease into it, because your body, the muscles in your body that hold you up, so it's the chain, I can't remember the official title, but you have sort of that main core and chain. It is not used to standing all the time if you have been sitting all the time. So you actually need to build up the endurance to be standing for those long times. So I would say kind of ease into it. If you have a tall bar stool or chair where you can kind of slowly get into that and maybe read up on kind of building your endurance towards standing. And that's where it's nice to have the sit stand option. And whether that is having a sit stand desk that can raise when you need it, put it back down and just go back to your typical chair. That's an option if you have something like the Very Desk, which sits on top of your desktop and you can kind of lift and lower. And they're a really reputable product as well. And I see Patrick is saying shoes or barefoot. Any preference? I would say personal preference. I go barefoot. But I would say try. And it also depends on how long that you're actually standing. This is harder to do for a long time. When I have had it a few times where I've been standing for almost 2 hours doing a presentation, and it does start to get tired. I have to move my legs around. So typically I will kind of maybe lean to a side, make sure I'm bending my legs, etc., moving them around, because you don't want to be super stiff. Just like the disadvantage when you're in a room, you can move around. It's natural to move around a room, and it's usually recommended. When you are just here because your microphone is in one place and your camera's in one place, it's a lot harder to do that. So I do recommend kind of moving your legs. You can sort of shuffle from side to side and kick them around a little bit. And Jez says, I go bare feet or socks, anti-fatigue mat. Yeah, it's a great option. All right, so I hope this has given you some insight. Really what I want you to do is just to test it for yourself. See what you prefer, because there is no right answer. You want to think, how do I want to come across? Is it more conversational, more intimate? Is it more teaching and polished? What is it that you're trying to evoke? And also, what feels good for you? Because you're the one who's actually presenting. In my mind, whatever makes you show up authentically and connect with your audience, that is what you want to do. And remember that if you are someone who is looking to get better at this and show up a little bit better, is that I do have a training, so you can click on the description below for more details and really just kind of get into it and put all of the pieces together so that you can show up better and you can have more engaging and professional looking online presentations.